Politics and religion. Politics. The English Parliament under the Stuart monarchs was at the center of politics as never before. It established itself in practice as the ultimate political authority in the country. Its debates and actions remain at the heart of British constitutional and legal ideas. The English Civil Wars and Interregnum of 1649 to 1660, the Restoration and the Glorious Revolution, results of bitter confrontations between the king and the parliament, are perhaps the most dramatic series of political events in British history. James I and Charles I had begun by regarding Parliament as a mere royal council, to be summoned and dismissed at will. By the time Anne came to the throne, the various revolutions had placed the sovereign in a much humbler position. The idea of ruling without Parliament was dead. The two houses united were so strong that Anne only once ventured to refuse assent to a bill, and since then the so-called royal veto on a bill has never been exercised. Through the complete control over taxation finally gained at the Glorious Revolution by the Bill of Rights, the House of Commons was the more powerful of the two. But for a long time, the House of Lords played a very active part. Peers generally formed a majority of the Royal Council, which was becoming a real cabinet. The wealthier peers, who owned land in a large number of the smaller boroughs, controlled the elections in these towns and thus had great influence over the House of Commons. The House of Lords used its power very freely, especially in rejecting bills from the Commons, and exerted a strong check on the House of Commons. But if it came to a contest, the Commons could win through their control over taxes. Not only had parliaments as a whole won its victory, but the two great political parties, Whigs and Tories, had become so well organized that the government could only be carried on by one party at a time. That is to say, the monarch could no longer choose his ministers from both parties. If the Whigs had a majority in the House of Commons, the king or queen must form a Whig government. If the Tories had a majority, the government must be formed from the Tories. Thus the country began to have not only parliamentary government, but also party government. Religion. Religion has often been regarded as the motor for change and upheaval in 17th century England. It has been seen as the prime cause of the civil wars, the inspiration for the godly rule of Oliver Cromwell, and the central to the Glorious Revolution of 1688 to 1689. Fears of popery, it has been suggested, helped to forge English national identity. In Stuart England, the Protestant Church of England was divided between the conservatives who wanted to keep the whole organization of the church as it was, and the reformers or Puritans who wanted to change to a much simpler church organization. During the early Stuart period, the size of the Puritan population continued to grow. Both King James I and King Charles I saw them as a threat to the established church. Persecution led to some Puritans leaving Britain to found new colonies in America. The most famous group, the Pilgrim Fathers, fled the East Midlands and established a colony in present-day Plymouth, Massachusetts in 1620 after the founding of Jamestown, Virginia. In 1604, every subject of the king could be compelled to conform to the one national church. In the middle of the century, the national church had been overthrown and its services forbidden. With the restoration of monarchy, the national church was restored, and the nonconformists were again persecuted. But by the time of Anne, such persecution had ceased, and toleration for all Protestants was secured. The laws against the Catholics were not repealed. In practice, however, Catholics were seldom disturbed, and although the exercise of their religion was illegal, it was openly carried on. The Stuart era was one of the most tumultuous in English history. Here are some highlights about Stuart politics and religion. The burning political question was whether monarchs or parliaments should rule England. The English Civil Wars, the Interregnum, the Restoration, and the Glorious Revolution are all results of confrontations between the king and the parliament. After all the dramatic political events, The Parliament established itself as the ultimate political authority in the country. The country had not only parliamentary government, but also party government. Religion was the motor for all major social changes and upheavals. Fierce popery helped to forge English national identity. The Protestants were divided between conservatives and Puritans. Persecuting Puritans led to the formation of new colonies in America. That's all for today's lesson. Thanks for listening.